Right, hello and welcome to episode 61 of the ReptiChat podcast. It's a little bit different this week because it's not quite the birthday, but the episode afterwards is past the birthday. So we're sort of celebrating 2 years of the ReptiChat podcast across this episode and the following episode. So that's exciting. I didn't realise. I date checked earlier today and I was like, oh, so yeah, as of I think it's the 18th, that will officially be 2 years of the podcast. So yeah, thank you very much for everybody that's tuning in. Makes me come back week after week after week after week after week to bring you guys what is me sitting in my shed talking to guests for an hour or so. So yeah, much appreciated. Talking of much appreciated, let's talk Patreons. Patreons, you guys and girls are on screen now, as always. I am eternally grateful for your continued support, and you guys are awesome. If you want to know more about Patreon, here's a quick little spiel. It starts at as little as £1 a month. There's a 7-day free trial. You get access to a Discord server, which is basically just reptile people talking about reptile stuff, and then there's some not reptile chat as well, which is good. You get discounts on merch, and with the coming drop of species clothing, all Patreon members will get a special little discount code from me to say thank you. So yeah, link is in the description as always. Talking of species, you've seen me wearing this, you've seen it on Instagram, you've seen me rambling about it for ages. We have a date, 17th of February. That's 9 days from today. Pre-order goes live. That's t-shirts from me. That's t-shirts from Species. That's Riddler Reptiles merch. That's Paul's Monitors merch. There's a few other bits and bobs on there as well. All of that pre-order 17th of Feb. The pre-order is open for 2 weeks. Closed on the 28th of February, and then after the 28th of February, all your stuff will be made. So yeah, if you order on the 17th, there's a bit more of a wait, but it's coming. I have to do a pre-order because I haven't got the space to have a large stock, so I have to make them all to order. But that means, if anything, they're made with even more love. They're all hand printed by myself. I've tested the garments and they are mint. I'm well happy with that. So yeah, 17th of February, set the reminder in your diaries, on your phones, wherever you want to do it. I've got a website that's been done and everything, so it should be super, super easy. Talking of super, super easy, where is my next bit? Today's podcast sponsor. Let's get that going. Right. Hello. Welcome. It's me, Ben, from the past, doing an advert. Pre-recorded it. It's going to be so much better than normal. So, as I am sure you are aware, today's video is sponsored by Bobby of Rango's Tats. For some reason, there seems to be a link between reptile keepers and people that have tattoos. I don't know where this love for ink and scales comes from, but the majority of reptile keepers have tattoos. And that is why Bobby of Rango's Tats has decided to support the pod for the next few months. Bobby is based over in Bishop Stortford, which is near Stansted Airport, at a studio called Obsidian Ink. I've actually got 3 tattoos from Bobby, and each and every one of them has blown my expectations out of the water. If you're a reptile keeper that likes tattoos, or a tattoo enthusiast that likes reptiles, head over Rango's Tats on Instagram. Start your message with the word ReptiChat. Hopefully you've enjoyed my new advert. Back to the podcast. Enjoy. Wow. Thank you, Past Ben. That was mint. Right, let's have a look who's in the comments before we get today's guest on. So, first up, Early Gang. Thank you, Dan. Love you. You're a star. Nice collection, by the way. If you haven't seen Dan's collection recently, Riddler Reptiles just dropped a sick reptile room tour. So head over and watch that. David, lovely to have you here. Made one. I'm most disorganized man on the planet, but I finally made one. I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. MJH, Matt, lovely to have you here. Thank you very much for coming along. Serenity, lovely. Why lovely? Lovely to have you here. Thank you for tuning in from all the way across the pond. And thank you very much for the congrats on 2 years. Mr. Paul's Monitors in the house. I'm on TV. Yes, I'm doing it, Mum. I'm doing it. I've heard Ben is super, super easy. Ask my wife. Josh, lovely. I've got to stop saying lovely. Thank you for coming. Nice to have you here. Right, let me stop rambling and let's talk about today's guest. So today's guest is a bit, I don't really know, but let's say Khaleesi, the mother of dragons. And the dragons I'm talking of specifically are Abronia. And I probably butchered that. But let's stop me rambling on and let's get today's guest on. Please welcome Savannah Noland of Perfect Hue LLC on Instagram. I remember that correctly. Savannah, thank you very much for coming on.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Fantastic stuff. So I don't know if you've listened to podcasts before or not, but we like to start every episode with what I like to call quickfire questions. They're the same as every other podcast, really. Everyone does quickfire questions now, but it's simple this or that. It'll get us going. So if you're happy, we can get started.
Yeah.
Awesome. So nice and simple. Start off with cats or dogs?
Cats.
Okay. Snakes or lizards?
Lizards.
Frogs or salamanders?
Oh, that's a hard one. Salamanders.
Nice. I can't see my list. There we go. Centipedes or millipedes?
Millipedes.
Nice. Yeah, I don't like centipedes. They give me the creeps. Spiders or scorpions?
Spiders.
Butterflies or birds?
Birds.
Grassland or woodland?
Woodland.
Nice. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Hot climate or cold climate?
Cold.
Nice. And then finally, what is your favorite biscuit? Or for Americans, what's your favorite cookie?
I don't really have one. I kind of like making them myself. So
the homemade cookies, spot on. Can't argue with that. It's I have to apologize. It's a very British. We love our biscuits over here.
Oh yeah, I'm not judging. I'm a fan.
I'm still waiting for one of my listeners to create like a leaderboard, but nobody's done that yet, and I haven't got the time.
Fair.
So I guess I have to apologize to start off with. So normally when I'm podcasting, I have like a script in front of me, and this year I've decided that I'm not going to do a script, so it's all off the top of my head. So I'm going to stumble over my words. I'll probably ask stupid questions, but I think it makes for a better podcast. So first of all, tell us a bit about yourself. Where did your sort of passion for reptiles start? How did it evolve to where you are now? And then sort of what are you keeping and all that sort of jazz?
That's a difficult one for me to explain because it's a hobby I picked up not expecting to fall in love with.
Right, okay.
I got my first reptile 4 or 5 years ago, and I went big. I got a tegu.
Nice.
And while setting up the massive enclosure was kind of like where I realized how much I loved just designing a terrarium, like trying to find endemic plants and making biotopes especially. And that kind of just funneled down to, all right, well, now I've done a burrowing species that's temperate or tropical in a way. Now I want to also get something arid, something arboreal, something semi-aquatic, and I just wanted like one of each. And along the journey, just tried up things, didn't work out. Some did, some didn't, until I am where I am now, falling completely in love with designing the arboreal enclosures with not tropical plants necessarily. All of my enclosures look tropical, but it's because I haven't figured out how to nail down the temperate look yet.
Right, okay.
But I'm very enthusiastic with it. Like I love it. It's one of those things that I just repeatedly do, and we'll just dedicate basically an entire day or two to one enclosure.
It's easily done. I think I quite often say that one of my favorite parts of the hobby is designing and like making the enclosures and setting them up and changing them up. And I think it's because you can literally put a slice of the rainforest or the desert or wherever in your living room. Mm-hmm. And if you nail it, you can't tell the difference from real life to the box in your house.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's anytime someone comes through my home, they always take a detour through like the enclosures because it's like the first thing you see when you walk in. It's just a giant wall of 10 enclosures.
Awesome stuff. And then a tegu is pretty good going for a first reptile.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the tegu.
So that was definitely fun. I got him as a hatchling, so got to start small. When I was in high school, before I got into the hobby, I wanted a tegu. Like, I don't even remember like where I saw it. It was just something. But then, while looking into like the care, realizing how much space they required, it kind of realizing, okay, I can't do this while I live with my mom. She'll move me out, and the lizard will live in. But Yeah, I'm a keeper who's basically all or nothing. So it's kind of full stop. Just do everything like the best way to do it, and just dropping easily $1,000 in a day, just making sure I have everything I need. Obviously, with a
Yeah,
tegu, costs a lot more than that.
yeah. And that's just for the enclosure because it's like the size of a house.
Hmm. But he was really fun. He he would free roam every single day. He tried to commandeer my couch. He had his little basking spot set up outside of, and we'd go out into the courtyard, and the neighbors would see us. They'd always come and see, like, ask about him, and he didn't want any of that. He'd just walk back to the apartment. And it was a huge personality. It was, in my opinion, despite being a large amount of work and definitely maybe not a beginner animal, it was a great introduction into lizards.
Yeah, definitely.
When you're normally just seeing anoles or something that just run at the sight of you.
Yeah.
So it was definitely lifting the veil for me.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I think as a first lizard, obviously, despite the size, the care that you have to learn pretty quickly is a very good stepping stone into the hobby. Like, it might take you a little. It's a bit like chameleons. People always say chameleons aren't a good first reptile, but I think if you can nail a chameleon by learning the like UVB, halogens, supplementation, everything like that, then you're very well set for anything you decide to do in the future. So again, a
Mhm.
tegu, big responsibility, lots to learn, but if you nail it, you're set. Perfect.
Yeah. It was definitely learning something new every single day. It was
Yeah.
it was it was progress on my relationship with him every single day, and learning to do something, an introduction to another concept, because I went bioactive from the get-go too.
Yeah.
So that was something where you're presented with surface level information, and then as you look more into it, it's a lot denser than people explain it.
Yeah, that's why I tend to use the term naturalistic for most of my enclosures as a instead of bioactive, because
Mhm.
despite obviously I've got like soils that have a mix, I've got leaf litter, and I've got isopods and springtails and stuff. But when you look into like bioactives, there's like 8 different soil levels, and there's different layers, and all, and like it's a whole like I think you could spend years setting up that enclosure bioactive before you even introduced your like pet or your reptile that's going in there because there's so much involved. But yeah, I think it's definitely the way to go. Starting from day dot, you haven't got the worry of repti carpet or calci sand or
Yeah.
anything like that because you're straight
Mhm.
into the deep end, so to speak. Um, so yeah, that's pretty cool. And then from Tegu 5 years ago, where are you at now?
I have a pair of Agurnia hosmeri, Agurnia stokesi, one bearded dragon that we just collected somewhere along the way, and she's been with us. And then there's 11 Abronia now. That's where I've settled on focusing on the Abronia, that's for sure.
Nice.
But
Nice.
I've worked with a variety of reptiles, and I liked them all, but nothing clicked as much as the Agurnia and the Abronia. So
Yeah, I think there's a point where you sort of find your species as well. Like I've done a lot of snakes throughout my 20 odd years of keeping reptiles, and the monitors I picked up. How long have I had those for now? 18 months, maybe. I'm not sure, but literally as soon as I got those, I was like, I love these.
yeah, exactly.
And I don't not obviously like if you get a new reptile, you always get that instant love anyway because it's new, but the passion hasn't disappeared at all for the monitors. So it's obviously the same for the Abronia for you. Um,
Mm.
and Agonia are awesome. I've got a friend that's got a pair of, I don't know which ones they are. He's in the comments. Dan, what Agonia have you got? Um, he'll remind us in a minute. But all that whole sort of is it genus? I'm not very good with words sometimes, but like all the Agonia species, very very cool. Big fan of those. Um,
Yeah, I like
have you
them.
got have you got a pair of each?
Yeah, I had originally a group of 4, and they were all babies, and we were only sure that one was probably male, but it ended up that it was a 2.2. So
Right.
I ended up with 2 pairs perfectly, but for some reason in captivity, we kind of struggle to keep them in more than 1.2 groups. So I think when the second male matured, he was instantly targeted by my other male, and
Right.
it was too stressful because I had an event where I tried introducing and like it was supposed to be another female, but ended up being a male, and that problem male almost took the leg off of
Oh, right.
the new animal. So my vet actually saved his leg, and as a going away gift, I let her have him. So,
Nice.
and then when he started bullying the other male, I split the pairs up, and then sold one of the pairs to a friend of mine, which was it was very difficult because like I said, I had them since they were babies. I'm very
Yeah.
fond with them. I worked with them every single day. They're very social, which is quite unusual for the species. I guess. I don't know. They're really fun. I love them, but
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Like Dan has commented, he's got a depressor,
oh yeah.
which, but all that whole range of them, that I described them like little potato skinks because I don't, there's something about them. They're just very round and like almost like hamsters, but lizards. Um, but yeah, big
Yeah.
fan of those. Have you had any joy breeding them yet? Are you going to in the future? Or?
Yeah, yeah, actually, not last year, the year before, I produced 3 of the Hosmer eyes. That was actually the first reptile I bred successfully or
Nice.
even attempted with, and those babies were the cutest things in the
Yeah,
world,
I can
but
imagine.
and I was I was real nervous because I was worried if they would continue trying to breed and then the enclosure being overcrowded because I moved mom, dad, and 3 babies to a 6-foot enclosure so they'd have more space just in case they were because the babies were with me for a while. Like it was very difficult to sell them, but I ended up selling the 3 babies to a school.
Okay.
So yeah, because I saw mom and dad initiating courtship and I just kind of panicked and was like, okay, nope, we're not gonna just
Yeah, yeah.
have endless babies here.
So I don't know a lot about them, but well, I presume they were fine as a group of mum, dad, and babies,
Oh
and there's
yeah.
no real. I imagine the only issues you get are probably when, like, if there's a male baby and it starts to mature, then you'll have them fighting again.
That's been one of the thoughts or worries that's been in the back of my mind, but we didn't get to that point,
Yeah,
thankfully.
no, that's
But
good.
they're a colony species. They're very intelligent. There's a study that was done, like even some people say that they're actually quite monogamous, like they'll pair. Sometimes there'll be an alpha female, we'll call it, and then the beta female, the alpha male will have those 2 females to mate with.
Yeah.
But you know, there was a study for Cunninghams where they were even reluctant to inbreed, even like with like
Okay.
habitat destruction. But I've spoken to some Australians and they've said, yeah, one of my males got into the female enclosure, mated with mom and sister with gusto. So like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, either way, very. Yeah, that's that could just be because they're in Australia. To be fair, I know what some Australians are like. I hope
Yeah,
they're not listening. I apologise if I've just offended our entire country, but it's fine. It's fine. So yeah, that's cool. I don't know which species of Begonia I would like to keep, um, but it's definitely something on the list in the future. There's um there's something about them. They're just incredible. But the main topic of today is Abronia. So these little lizards are like tiny little dragons, and they are so cool. And you have got loads of them. And I know nothing about them apart from that they are really really cool. So give us a brief overview. What sort of tell us about Abronia?
they are actually, you mentioned chameleons earlier. The care is very similar. There are some different differences depending on species, but yeah, no, they're arboreal. The best way to keep them and is would be with a screen enclosure. They do really well outside. I don't keep mine outside. I can't, not where I live. But um the care, and I don't know chameleons well enough to say if it's exactly this way, but they can handle pretty warm days, not excessively, but they need very cold nights
Right. Okay.
because where they're from extremely high elevation cloud forests in Mexico. Some of the species I keep are from Guatemala, and almost every night, at least, it'll get down to the low 60 Fahrenheit, and during winter, it can get even colder to like 40 Fahrenheit, depending on the species. But it's
I was
always
going
a
to
cold
do
night.
in centigrade, but it sounds
Yeah, I
very
should have
cold.
looked it up
It's
beforehand,
fine.
but I forgot.
What we say? Let's say 40 to C for all those people listening. So it's like 4 degrees Celsius. That's how cold it is here at the moment. It's horrible. So yeah, that's a big drop overnight.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
mad.
but to compare them back to chameleons, they need the same level of high ventilation, fresh air exchange, or they're prone to respiratory infections. They don't handle stress terribly well. It's really hard to get an accurate gauge of how the species performs because some people say they don't handle stress well. I think they're actually a bit more hardy than we give them credit for, but like they're an endangered species.
Yeah.
And especially in America, they are very commonly smuggled into the United States. Actually, I'm pretty sure the UK has more successful breeders than America. It's
Oh,
actually
okay.
ironic. There are some good people in the UK doing really good work with them. Same in Europe or the rest of Europe rather. But yeah, no. So the animals are usually in bad shape. Even if they seem okay, they usually don't do well long term, just
Right. Okay.
from the smuggling process. So
Yeah. To be fair, I imagine that is quite a stressful process. I wouldn't want to be smuggled into anywhere.
it's really bad. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Just a comment there. What was that say? It's a comment from Paul that says, "I used to have a male." He
Like
used to have a
Chilla.
male one of those, and
Yeah.
he was an arsehole.
I have a female Chilla. She does not like me either, but she trusts me enough to get on my hand if I have a bug,
Yeah,
but otherwise she doesn't want much to do with me, but she's my rescue, so
yeah.
it's okay.
So, are all of yours, are they captive bred? Are they wild caught? A bit of both?
So one of them is a rescue, one was wild caught, and I was asked to take her.
Right, okay.
That's the only reason I have her, because knowing what I know now, if I knew an animal was wild caught, I I I wouldn't do it. I do have 2 long-term captives, or 3. I'm not sure. One might be captive bred, but I'm not sure because everyone says, yeah, they're captive born, but they don't know or they're
Yeah.
lying.
I suppose
Um,
there's no real proof unless you know the breeder.
right, exactly. And my first Abronia, my Graminia, I only have one. I just have her. She's actually gravid. She's the first one I've bred, and hopefully sometime in the next coming few months, hopefully I'll have babies.
Fingers
But
crossed.
she's captive born. Because usually what happens is when they're all smuggled in, the females are gravid over winter.
Right, okay.
So when they start becoming active again, we think that's when they're grabbed and they're smuggled over. So they arrive in the United States, they're sold, and then they give birth. And that's
Yeah.
how a majority of the captive born Abronia are here. And
Yeah.
and because of that, they're a gray area animal.
Right. Yeah, it
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, so and I do have a few that are captive bred and born. 2 of them are actually imports. So they were imported from Canada, but originally came from the Czech Republic.
Right, okay.
So they're actually the first Abronia to be legally imported from Europe to the
That's
United
awesome. They've
States.
got some air miles on them, blimey.
Those CITES, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like last year was the first year Abronia had been legally imported from Mexico to the United States since
Wow.
2016, probably.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, like I said, I literally know nothing about them at all, except what they look like. So, I imagine I'm not the only one in that boat. Tell us a bit more about the lizards themselves. What sort of size are we getting? What sort of enclosures are we keeping them in? What sort of Let's start with that. What sort of size and what sort of enclosures, size-wise, are you keeping them in?
Well, I do it a bit differently than other people, but I've kept them all sorts of ways, and I can tell you the easiest way would be, and the most common way, would be like the screen enclosures. I think the ZooMed Reptibreeze mediums
Yeah.
is like, in my opinion, the absolute minimum one should be in.
Okay.
People often will have a pair and they'll keep them together. Like they need a larger space, obviously, for a pair. I keep my individuals in. You're gonna have to convert this too. Sorry,
That's fine. I can do that.
but it's a PVC enclosure that's 24 length, 18 width, and 36 height.
No, that's fine. We for enclosures, we're pretty good at doing inches still. We like to swap and change
Okay.
it there. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
but
2 foot
I
by
have
foot and a half by 3 foot.
my enclosures are modified with fans though, and they're connected to smart controllers, so that lowers the humidity during the day and provides fresh airflow. Without that, if you keep them in glass or PVC, you're going to need fans.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the safest way to do it is the screen enclosure.
Right.
It's
Okay, that makes sense.
mhm,
Just got to make sure that there's decent airflow coming in and going out all the time.
yep,
No,
yeah.
that
So
makes perfect sense.
yeah, it's definitely fun because when I was using the mesh enclosures, I would build substrate boxes, and that was a lot of work. Just so I could have the substrate, just so I could have the more naturalistic approach.
Yeah.
And this was significantly easier for me because I'm not too shy of power tools,
Yeah.
like cutting the holes and everything like that, and just kind of DIY. I like it a lot more. I can control the temperatures. I get better humidity retention. But yeah, but still, like if someone was like just getting in and they don't know like their way around power tools or whoever, if they're not confident in doing that, I would just tell them get the screen enclosure and cover like 1 or 2 walls with either PVC or 3D spacer cloth.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward to be fair on that. What sort of size are we talking when we? Because I'm trying to envision them in my head. Obviously, I've seen pictures, but I can't work out. Are we talking like cresty size? Are we talking like beardy size? Probably not.
Not beardy size. Some of them are big. I'm trying to think of a good example, like Graminia and the Lytherchilla, and then Taeniata. Those are usually the most common ones you'll see.
Yeah.
But Graminia and Taeniata are virtually identical. They actually have like a similar range in the wild. And I would say they're like I wish I could just go grab her, but I don't
Yeah.
want to bother. They're probably like this long with tail, maybe
Okay,
a
so
little
that's
longer.
what like
But they're skinnies.
like
They're
9 to
much
12
thinner.
inches, I guess.
Yeah,
Tip to
like
tail,
but
is that?
some species are really big.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
forget that there's more than one species of Abronia. How many species? I haven't asked you that. How many species do you have of Abronia?
four,
Cool. Okay.
four. I've got the Graminia, Lytherchilla, Arita, which is the one I have the most of. That's the one I'm focused on working with, and then Smith Eye, which was my dream species that I always wanted to keep, but they're arguably more sensitive than the other species. I think because they come from higher elevations. So
Okay.
when they end up smuggled, they usually die, and because of that, I just didn't want to ever work with one because I knew it would be wild caught. But last year, two males were legally imported, so I grabbed one.
Yeah, no, that's exactly stuff. So I presume you're on the lookout for a female at some point if another import happens.
Yeah,
Got to try and get those captive bred ones eventually.
yeah. He's wonderful. He's beautiful. The females. It's actually funny. The males are usually just blue or green. The females have high variability. Like there can be red and orange and white and there are all sorts of there's speculation that the black ones because their base color is black and then they have all these other different flashes of colors. There's speculation that the females that look that way are actually different species
Right.
but
Okay.
just lack a proper description. Like there's a lot of that actually too with like the Arita, the ones I keep. You'll sometimes see Abronia vasconcelosi and Arita, but they're two different species in captivity, but we're quite certain they're actually the same species.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
Just
makes sense.
yeah.
That
Or
makes
at least what's labeled as Arita is actually vasconcelosi because what was described by Cope, I think in like 1989 or something, for Arita, there was only one specimen found, and it's never been found again.
sense. Right. Okay.
So
Yeah, that's mad. Um, Oh, I like that's good. Right, let's have a look at comments quickly. Paul is there as well. It's just Paul again. I remember seeing Gromenia like 10 years ago for £300, and now they're at well over 1k. That's about. I have no idea the price point. Obviously, you're saying they're well over a k. I don't know how much.
I got my first Abronia, the Gromenia, 3 years ago. I think almost 4 years ago. I got her for 475 USD for a captive born animal. And yeah, now they easily are $1,000 minimum.
Wow.
It's actually ridiculous, especially for animals you're buying that aren't even captive born
Yeah, yeah,
and potentially have a slew of health issues.
yeah. And it's something you could get, and then 3 weeks later, it's no longer with you. That's mad. But I suppose if you're sort of dedicated into wanting to produce captive bred ones to reduce the ones coming in wild caught, then I suppose it's a risk that you have to take. But yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's yeah.
Yeah, that's mad. So I know you said they vary in color. I can't get my words out. Do they sort of, I hate the term, but do they like fire up and fire down, same as like cresties and beardies can change color a bit, or would you say that like that is the color or do they change as they get older? I don't honestly, because I know nothing.
Well, yeah, to both. They do. I wouldn't say they specifically fire up or down, but they can, like if the temperatures are colder, they can look a lot darker because that's just how they react to being
Yeah,
cold, maybe trying to absorb more heat, similar to a beardy. But they don't fire up quite as drastically, like as you see like cresties or other geckos that are like night and day, where it's like looks like totally different
yeah,
animals.
different animals. No,
The
that's cool.
babies, yeah, the
Yeah, go on.
babies all. It's hard to describe because of each species, like the babies tend to look different. But like for like Graminia, they're like little black and white babies with stripes. And then as they get older, they lose all those stripes, and then they just become basically a solid colored animal.
Right, okay, that's cool. Yeah, there's something about them. I think the keeled scales on them as well is just like I love a keeled scale.
You would really like the Smith Eye then, because they had that's
Yeah,
one of their characteristics, because they had
yeah,
more keeled shaped scales.
yeah. It's cool. The way especially their heads as well, like how the scales are keeled, and then they sort of, but they literally look like dragons. If they were like the size of, I don't know, a dragon, you would think they're a dragon. Obviously, I know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's what everyone says whenever they see them. They think, oh my god, that's an actual dragon, and it's not that I don't agree. I've never really looked at them that way,
Yeah,
which is kind of ironic because my favorite types of Abronia are the ones that have like the horns,
yeah, yeah,
the thorn like scales. But yeah, no, they do look like dragons. Honestly,
yeah.
it's quite unique. They're very beautiful. They they're they're very smart too. I wouldn't quite say monitor level smart, but they're very close.
Okay, that's interesting.
So
And
they
then yeah, go on. Give us. Have you got
No,
an
I was just gonna
example?
say they each have like their own very interesting personality. So
Okay.
like not all of mine like me very much, but like my Graminia, she's my prized cow. I love her. She's my favorite. She's my perfect princess. She has the best personality. Like she wants to come out, she'll crawl out on me. Sometimes she'll just crawl in my pocket and sleep.
Yeah,
It's
that's cool. That's cool.
I got very lucky with her. She's wonderful. But now that she's gravid, she spends all day basking. So
Yeah, just leave her to it for now.
yeah.
Good stuff. What sort of, whilst we're still on sort of housing, I suppose. UVB, what sort of basking temps are we talking?
So during this time of year, I give them it's hard. It's You have to bear in mind my enclosures are awful because of the lid. It's very dense, so I have to use a high percentage UVB. I have to use a 14%
Right,
just
okay.
to get a UVI of 3 to 4.
Yeah.
So because of how close the basking spot has to be, I currently use 35-watt halogens
Okay.
from Arcadia. And I like the halogens because they're hotter and it's a tighter basking spot. It makes the
Yeah.
basking spot smaller because I want to minimize how much I raise the ambient temperatures because they are a cooler species. Like I think, like, if I look at the enclosures right now, they're 64 degrees Fahrenheit during the
Right.
day, and then at night they drop much lower because I'll open the door. Like, that's
Yeah,
how I spend
to
each
really
winter.
get
It's
that
having the door
temperature.
open and it's freezing in here.
That's got to
But
be quite nerve-wracking. Like, all of my reptiles are in like my kitchen dining room, and we've got the back door literally like next to the Vivs. And in the winter, like I let the dogs out to go to the toilet. I'm like, get the door closed, don't let the heat out.
yeah, no, for here it's different. I actually do have like the Abronia and the Beardy in the same room though. So so for winter, I set them up with a deep heat projector connected to the thermostat. So if they get too cold, then it kicks on. But the other
Yeah,
enclosures are allowed to get like to 50 and lower
yeah, that's
because
crazy.
it's the only time of year I can do it. So
Yeah, I think that's got to be quite nerve-wracking as well. I suppose it's a bit like hibernating your tortoise for the first time. That's scary as well. Just anything cold-blooded, letting it that cold is yeah, it makes me go whoa. That's
yeah,
scary stuff.
but I mean that's what they have in the
Yeah, yeah, of
wild.
course.
Like there are a lot of arguments that go into it as to like why it's like necessary, but we don't honestly know at this point like what the long-term effects of keeping them so warm all year round has on them. We need more specific studies.
Yeah,
But there's no harm in providing what we can because that's what they get in the wild. The closest we can get is, how they're existing there. And especially too cuz like the females, the cold weather for them triggers the signal, like the hormones where they start making follicles and then they'll begin ovulating and then they'll mate like around August, October, maybe at the latest.
yeah,
And then they'll go through winter gravid. So the gestation time and can be as long as like 9 months.
yeah.
So
But they obviously need that temperature drop for some sort of um, growth with when they're gravid as well. It's a bit like some chameleons. You have to drop the temperatures like midway through incubation to
like
simulate the winter.
diapause.
Yeah, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
I spent like a good chunk of the winter actually trying to like dig up information on that, like because they're viviparous, they give live birth.
Yeah,
So it's just like I've tried asking around, it's like, is there like a similar procedure for animals where they have to get that cold in order for the babies to begin developing, or is that something strictly for eggs? Or is it just not matter? It's just that that is what they do to get through winter to make sure they give birth in time for the babies to have optimal survival time. Like when the bugs are out, when it's warmer, everything like that.
yeah, makes sense. Spermatogenesis.
This
I
is the second
presume.
time I heard that word, and you reminded me that I need to remember to look it up.
I'm
There's vitellogenesis and the other one that he just said.
yeah. To be fair, I'm sure Paul will elaborate a little bit if he wants to. He did actually have quite a nice question up there as well for you. Abronia are a species that everybody wants. What are 3 things people should be aware of before getting into them?
Oh. They're more often than not illegally smuggled. So you were taking 2 steps back in the beginning of your journey. People will very easily lie to you about the origins of these animals. Uh, that's honestly the biggest one, especially in the United States,
Yeah,
because we're right there. We're right on top of Central America. Second one, hmm, they need the cold nights. That's the second one. Whenever I'm talking to people, if I've ever sold an animal or people are interested in getting one and they're asking about the care, they usually change their mind when I tell them about the care.
okay.
They like how cold they need it to be because no one can really do that indoors unless you're comfortable spending $500 a month on your AC bill
Yeah, yeah.
or
But
you
especially in
happen
the
to live in a
winter,
climate.
if you're in the winter, you don't want to be putting AC on and spending that much money every month to make the house even colder.
Yeah, and then the third thing would probably tie into the first point. Basically, since the animals are often smuggled, even if you're getting a long-term captive, there's still totally a chance that the animal has been living with some sort of irreparable damage. Like I think the most common ones I usually see are either hypovitaminasis A, sometimes MBD, gout, especially visceral gout, Yeah, so especially gout, because they can just have it for years, and if your care is good, they can basically live with it, but they're in pain, you're not gonna know.
Yeah.
And it's not a situation you want that animal to be in, and you don't want to facilitate the people who are muling those animals either.
No, definitely, definitely. I think that's why captive breeding is obviously so important. Um, Obviously, sometimes there's got to be a wild caught animal come in so we can produce those captive bred ones. But what I don't know, what is the population of captive animals like in the States? Not captive bred, but animals that are that are kept captive that could potentially produce captive bred babies. Is there a lot of them kept? Or
Um, I wouldn't say there's a lot of them kept. Unfortunately, every year a bunch of females will usually come in, but they'll be smuggled. They'll give birth. The babies usually don't survive because I think it's um, premature labor due to the stress of being smuggled.
yeah,
I think we have maybe, off the top of my head, 10 breeders who are actually breeding them. And
right, okay,
then the rest of it's very uncommon to see a captive bred and born animal. It's usually just captive born.
yeah, no,
So,
that's
but because last year was the first year imports legally came in, hopefully this year that'll be the case too. So that changes things a bit.
yeah, fingers crossed. And then yeah, that it sounds like hopefully will be positive for the species in captive bred species going for like probably next 5 years or so, and then hopefully you won't need any more imports because there'll be a nice healthy population over there.
I hope so, because there's a lot of logistics, especially the animals coming out of Mexico. like it, it's really hard to describe, like, because one of the things that stuck out for me, and a part of the work I do with Abronia, is restoring their colors closer to how they look in the wild. Because once they're in captivity, especially Lythorchilla and Graminia, they tend to lose those colors and they'll fade out to a dull, or even sometimes a bright blue rather than the bright emerald green you see them in pictures.
Yeah.
A lot of the animals that came in on the imports had wild colors, and some of those animals even gave birth.
Right. Okay.
So it was very unusual. But I saw the paper, like the reason I got like the Smith Eye, one of the reasons at least, was so I could see firsthand their papers, the CITES documents, the import papers. And for all intents and purposes, it seems legit, which, even if they are wild caught, it's still a step in the right direction, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah. 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 Yeah, you've got unfortunately got to take those steps to build the population. Paul's just come back with a nice little explanation. So, spermatogenesis is production of strong swimmers. This can happen when you cool an animal, and he's corrected it, and it allows the fertility to build up. And then,
Oh.
vitellogenesis is different. That's the production of ova ready to be fertilized. This isn't directly linked to winter, though a change in environment or food can trigger it. And then there's one more comment there as well. Neither are directly linked to winter, but species that hibernate get cold have a boom, and boom and bust food season will need that stimulus to allow strong fertility.
Yeah,
Nice,
'cause
thank you for the explanation there, Paul.
I'll probably like say this word wrong, but that was something I was looking into too. Was it fecundancy? Which is just basically, I think, if as I understand it, like the amount of usable sperm. Because the most common thing you'll see people do with almost any species is they'll cool them for breeding,
Yeah,
but no one explains why. So in my mind, I'm trying to understand: are they cooling to begin cycling for the behavior, or is it actually tied to um egg quality or sperm quality, like, or is it both? And
yeah.
it probably depends on the species, but that was like something I've been like trying to research for the past year. So it's
How's
definitely,
the research going with that? Where are you at?
it's very difficult, especially when it comes to Abronia. I think I've only found one or maybe two papers documenting, like, or it basically attempts at correlating litter size
Yeah,
to like snout length, and basically like how much the females weighed, like basically just trying to correlate basically anything.
yeah. They're just
So it's
trying to pluck at straws almost to start
yeah.
something.
Yeah, I think in one of the papers it had said too that litter sizes may be dependent on how wet the rainy season was, because if it's wetter, that means more bugs.
Yeah,
But it's always difficult because a lot of the studies that are done too with Abronia are usually confiscated animals. So like they're illegally sold, they're taken, and then they have like 91 litters across all these animals that they confiscated, and these facilities are trying to do work, and it's I don't know. I was reading it just the other day. It was pretty interesting. But in my opinion, there's just too many variables because like one, we don't know what a healthy Abronia really looks like, especially in captivity. Like I've been trying to work with my vet to like organize people who would be willing to participate in like blood draws for their animals, but it's really difficult to gather enough blood. It's really expensive too. And then if you do get enough blood, there's always a chance there'll be artifacts
yeah,
from stress from the drawing. And still, I need like 40 or 50 animals. I've only got like 11.
yeah. It's quite a stressful process for the animals as well.
Hmm.
So finding those people that are willing to stress the animals out. But I suppose it's for the greater good, and for the knowledge of the species as well.
Yeah. I think
Um,
so, but I would never blame someone for saying no, I'm not doing that. They're like treating
no,
their
no,
animal like it's made of glass. Like I don't blame them for that,
no,
honestly.
no, completely. Um, there's lots of comments coming in from Paul. He's joining the conversation about the cooling. Yes, you cool them as one, it's natural. Two, it builds fertility. Three, it allows a hard reset. And four, it's naturally a sign of spring to breed. So they said after the winter, the bugs come out. It's time for babies. But follow nature, and you can't mess up. That is very true. Obviously, following nature for these tiny little microclimates from where they come from is not as easy because you've got to go deep and dark to find those little pockets of Abronia in the wild.
Well, I mean they're partially endangered because of habitat destruction. So usually like the trees they live in and the bromeliads they live in, they're being harvested. So these animals, I think we kind of theorize that's how some of the animals are being collected because people will go to like villages in Mexico and pay children to go capture them for like
Yeah,
$5 for a bunch of lizards. And then they come into the United States and that's like $10,000 worth of animals that are being sold.
that is
And
mad.
also too, the locals, some locals also believe they're venomous. So
Right. Okay.
sometimes they'll kill them.
Right. Yeah. That's less than ideal.
Yeah.
But I
There are
suppose it's
protected lands like owned by the UMAs. There are registered facilities that can breed them in Mexico, but
that's
you
for
know,
like captive farmed, I suppose.
not necessarily farmed. Maybe on a UMA would be the closest thing because like if there's protected land by UMA, as it was explained to me, if there are Bronia on the land, the UMA can legally sell them. They
Right.
can't
Okay.
be poached, but they can be legally sold.
Okay. Fair enough. That makes sense. Um, I've got to stop saying as well. So it's hard without a script. I need like bullet points or something in the future. But um, so if somebody was let's go for the States because obviously it's a bit different over here. If you're wanting to buy an Abronia and you want to get into the hobby, um, what should they be looking for in an animal? Um, Either to make sure that it isn't like smuggled, or if it is a wild caught one, what sort of things should they be looking for in the animal to make sure, or try and make sure it's not on death's door, so to speak?
Uh, well,
Or what would you be looking for in the animal?
well, as I mentioned, depending on the species, usually like Graminia will be smuggled in, and they'll be bright green. It takes maybe a month or so, maybe 3 months for them to lose that green coloration, all the yellow pigments.
Yeah,
So a blue animal would be a more common indicator that it's either captive born or long term captive. But otherwise, you'd pretty much treat it, I think, the same as any other animal. Like if the animal is alert, eating, not super super skinny, not super overweight, because I've also seen a lot of issues too where long-term captives get sold and they almost immediately go into like organ failure or hepatic lipidosis just from being so overfed because people
Right.
feed them way too much. Like with my animals, they get maybe 2 bugs a week,
Okay.
and people will just feed them however much in one sitting. So they
So I
get
think obesity in reptiles is quite common, unfortunately, anyway, because obviously you can't take them for a walk like you can a dog, so you interact with them by feeding them.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
so
no. I yeah, no, that's pretty much exactly it. But people have to keep in mind these are arboreal animals, so they can't be overweight, otherwise they can't climb very well. And depending on like your supplements, I wouldn't go as far as saying they're sensitive, like in terms of their kidneys or their liver, but I have been seeing a lot of animals that have organ failure just from way too many supplements. And like you guys have Arcadia in the UK. Like here we have Arcadia products, but we're kind the ship's kind of manned by companies that don't know or have a holistic approach.
right,
So
okay,
it's like we rely on some studies, but like with all the vets in this country, there's no consensus on a supplement schedule. All we kind of know is that some vets will warn you about beta carotene, for example, because of studies done on old world chameleons and the
right,
suggestive data that they can't fully convert beta carotene into vitamin A. So you get hypovitaminosis A, or you have a toxicity in the liver from giving them beta carotene over long times. People giving them multivitamins every single week or calcium with every single feeding. Like it's we're over supplementing our animals. That's for sure over here.
right,
But
okay.
there's just there's no agreed upon schedule for people to follow. So
Yeah, it does. Obviously, it varies quite a lot, animal to animal or species to species as well. But like you say, obviously you have got Arcadia products over there, but I presume they're not as abundant as like. I can go to any reptile shop and it's full of Arcadia stuff. I know that obviously Arcadia do a. Oh, I'm going to butcher it now. I can't remember what it's called exactly, but it's like a supplement calendar or a diary or something, and it's like a dial that you can look at. And it's like feed one
yeah,
supplement
the
with
feeding
this.
program.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I should know that, but yeah. So yeah. Arcadia have a feeding cycle. Yeah. Um, but I know that Arcadia are pushing products more and more over to the States. So hopefully it's something that you will it will be accessible for you guys soon enough as it is. You'd think it'd be over there already, to be honest.
Yeah, we have like the core ones. We have like the Earth Pro A and CA and the revitalized and shed support and everything like that, which is basically all I use. I don't use
Yeah,
the shed support. I tried it. The reptiles hate it. They won't eat it. But yeah, no, largely over here we have what is it? Rapashi. And
yeah,
Rapashi did work on a lot of the formulas with exotic vets to help build them, but it's still like you have this weird conglomerate recipe of fillers and things you can't pronounce, and it's really weird, and that's why I prefer Arcadia, because it's all like items you can easily figure out what it is. It's all natural, and I don't know, I love it. I switched to Arcadia back when I first got into the hobby, so I had that advantage, and now I'm a pretty big Arcadia stan.
yeah. No, that's good. I am a big Arcadia fan, and like Paul says, I like Arcadia as it's all natural. To be fair, I think the main supplements that you mentioned, they are the three um supplements that Arcadia use on their feeding cycle. So yeah, I think there's a Paul again. Paul says
Yeah.
there's an Arcadia feeding cycle over three powders. So the feeding cycle obviously you may well be able to follow with what is accessible in the States. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I have no idea
Yeah,
what
it
you guys
was
have.
what I was using with my Tegu, following their feeding program,
Yeah,
the Earth Pro, the Calcium Pro, and the Revitalized. It
yeah.
worked really well. He was beautiful. He was actually I had a blue Tegu and he was actually blue.
Awesome.
So that was pretty cool. But as I I'm the kind of person that, like, if my animal does something remotely not normal, I kind of freak out and we go to the vet.
Right.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so so like I got to talk a lot with um the vets near closest to me, and conveniently I live not too far from one of the best exotic vets in the country. So, like, learning, like, their opinions and, like, how what their recommendations are, like, helped me a lot. So, like, now I think I only use calcium once a week instead of on every feeding. Um, and then the revitalize, I think once or twice a month.
Yeah, I think they recommend it like every 8th feed.
Mhm.
So that's about, yeah, it works out about
Yeah,
one
and
to
but
twice a
I
month.
don't think there are any studies in the United States yet regarding magnesium, but I still use it every now and then.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're using it over here. I haven't heard anything negative about it. Paul is just updating us again because he's the Arcadia guru in the chat today. He's saying calcium with every feed, calcium with magnesium every 4th feed, and then revitalized every 8th. And you can't overdose on calcium. That's interesting to know. I don't. I
Yeah,
only.
no, hypercalcemia is a thing. It definitely is. I think more of the issues are seen with people who use supplements that are all inclusive, so it's the calcium and the multivitamin.
Right.
But I am still overly cautious of hypercalcemia, so I don't do it every single time. And from I think I recently had blood work done on one of my animals who I've had for over a year. And there was nothing wrong in her like blood work that suggested anything bad, like uric acid or calcium or anything like that.
Good. Yeah.
So
So
I'd say,
I don't know enough about the bad. Like, I don't. To be fair, I don't know enough about supplementation to go either way. So following that Arcadia thing seems to be working absolutely fine for me at the moment.
they have a
Um,
really good Arcadia has a really good book
yeah,
on nutrition. It's simple.
I
It's not
do. I need to go
long.
and pick it up. I have no excuse as well. They're like 15 minutes down the road from me. I just go buy one. Right. Yeah. What's Paul is still, we're still talking in the comments about calcium as well. What do you say? If you have D3, you're more likely to get it. They can expel calcium if under the correct care. Also, high protein diets can lead to it as well, i.e., dubious.
Yeah, it's the way dubious store. It's when like people would feed dubias or gut load them with like dog food.
Yeah.
It's the way they store the uric acid in them. Feeding your reptiles too many dubias when fed, gut loaded that way, can significantly increase the chances of them getting gout,
Right.
which is incurable. It is very painful. It's eventually a death sentence for your animal.
Yeah. To be fair,
And
the people that tend to feed their dubious dog biscuits aren't feeding them the nice dog biscuits either. Like, I wouldn't want to be fed a steak that had only been the cow had only been fed biscuits. So
yeah, and I think even too hyper uh hypercalcemia, I believe, actually can mimic the symptoms can mimic MBD.
right, okay, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, I need to definitely do a lot more research into it. My like my care is good. My knowledge of that the next step is non-existent really. But it'll come with time, and it's one of those things. It's knowing where to start looking, and then I should probably just go and buy that Arcadia book.
It's a good read. It's there some things don't make sense in it, but otherwise it's still good. Like their list of vitamins and minerals and how it's actually interacting with the animal
Yeah,
is really good to know. And especially because like every year, and I know breeders who say this too, especially with Abronia, that they'll think they're 100% certain they're gonna end up with babies, and then they just don't.
right, okay,
And I've like wondered too. This was why I was doing the research into like vitellogenesis and cooling and trying to get answers, was because like every year we see people with locks, but babies never come. So is it just like a low sperm count? Is it in use of eggs? Because there are tons of vitamins and minerals that play a role in reproductive. the reproductive process. So I was like, is it linked possibly to oversupplementation, or is it just that we're not cooling the females, as like Paul was explaining the process? So it's just trying to narrow it down, and it's no one has answers because no one really pays attention. No one has like bookkeeping to that level, basically.
Yeah.
And I've been trying my best to like do what I can over the
Yeah, no,
past two
definitely.
years.
That's good. It sounds like you are pretty hot on the subject, to be honest. And I can imagine that it's quite. I don't know if you're documenting it, but I imagine you are quite keeping tabs and got notebooks everywhere. And yeah, hopefully you will be sort of on the forefront of supplementation and breeding of Abronia. It sounds like you're going the right direction anyway, if nothing else.
Yeah, I would like to. I try to help people however I can, whether it's through anecdotal evidence or studies done on other reptiles, that it would probably be safe to make comparisons between like similar species, other alligator lizards, or animals from similar climates. Depending, but like I help a lot of people, but like people have questions, and the best I can do is give them what I think or what we know about something that may be completely unrelated, because we won't know until very specific studies are done per species.
Yeah.
But it's still nice to like talk to people and like see their questions and like just basically help however I can, you know?
Yeah, of course, definitely. Definitely. Um, what is he saying? There's lots of comments coming through again. Um, if a female cycles, you'd still get slugs, or you should. So either females either don't cycle, or it's supposed to say, or reabsorbed before ovulation. Um,
I have
okay.
noticed too an alarming number of females seemingly. It's not, there's never, almost never a necropsy done, but the symptoms seem to kill the females, and I suspect it's either pre-ovulatory follicular stasis or follicular stasis if the females do ovulate and those follicles just continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. And just sadly, because people, like I was saying, people will be sure enough expecting babies, and then around the when the time comes, normally I guess when the female would expel slugs, the female that dies, and she's enormous,
Right.
so that
Yeah.
that follicle is just growing this entire time. And it's very unfortunate. It's hard for me to say whether it's a specific issue that I see Abronia go through or just something reptiles go through. Like because I'm so focused on Abronia, I'm not really looking at other species.
Yeah. What kind of UV? You said you're keeping them at a UVI of 3 to 4. Is that what you
Yeah, I
said?
think at the highest point it goes to 5. So 3.0 to 4.0 or 5.0 at very high points. I had to rearrange the gravid female's enclosure because she's been basking under her LEDs, which put her very, very close to her UVB. So
Right.
I had to rearrange so that she wasn't directly under the UVB but getting microwaved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but yeah, the what I aim for is between 3 and 5 at the maximum, but it's generally 3 to 4.
Yeah. Okay. I think he might be commenting some more, because by the sound I'm reading the comments and they're coming through. It's just, okay, so that's good. So he says that wouldn't be the issue. I'm expecting there might be another comment coming in a minute. We'll keep an eye on that. Yeah. So it sounds like you're definitely on the right track, and there should be some babies hopefully coming
Oh
soon.
yeah, that we did. Her lizard brain. When shortly after mating, she began only basking all day long.
Yeah.
She ended up getting really dehydrated because she was focusing on just basking. And I ended up taking her to the vet, and we did some ultrasounds, and the vet was like, "Yeah, she's full of poop." So we got to give her medication, and I think over the course of a month, we went back for another ultrasound. She started pooping again, and we were able to see I think 2 true ova. So she had ovulated at least um, 2 eggs, and then we went back. I think a month later or half a month later, and the ova had grown. So then another half month later or a month later, we went and we confirmed a little heartbeat in the little spine. So
That's so cool.
there is at least one baby. So now we're flying
That's really
blind.
exciting. So, do you know the? I don't know. Is it a gestation period? Is it? Well, that's the right word, isn't it? How long are you expecting, or have you got a rough due date at all?
She could give birth as early as next month, so it could be as early as like 6 months. Or there have been reports of the gestation lasting a year.
Right. Okay.
So it's a really big window. So it could be next month, it could be September.
Yeah, that's a big old window, isn't it?
But
That's
I think in captivity, the gestation, because we keep them so much warmer, I think that's why it's closer to like 6 months. And
yeah.
she just shed. I haven't been. No one knows. Again, no one knows. No one has been able to correlate shedding with a pre-lay shed equivalent for Abronia if it's
Yeah.
like related to hormones. No one knows. So we'll see if she gives birth next month. So I don't know, but I'm still going to need 3 or 4 or 5 more years before I can confidently say yes, there
Yeah.
is a shed correlated pre-birth.
Yeah. You can't do it just off the first one because it could just be purely coincidence.
Right, exactly. So it's an uphill battle in terms of establishing information because like even there are some really well-known breeders. Like there's one in the Czech Republic, there's one in the UK, there's one I think somewhere in Germany. Like there's a couple in the United States. That's really bad. No one pays attention to that kind of data, like because they have things to do. I have the privilege of sitting at home with my face pressed to the glass, so
Yeah.
because I work from home, so I get to spend all my time with my lizards and working with them and observing them. So like if anything changes, I immediately see it. But
Yeah. Definitely. That's definitely a plus of working from home. Like, oh, it's blinked 3 times. I'll mark that down just in case.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's weird. It's like okay, they're acting weird. They're hopefully about to shed or they're going to die. Let's see.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hope they don't just keel over. Right. We have been going for just over an hour, so I am going to wrap it up, and we're going to finish on a nice note because we've got babies coming soon. Fingers crossed, not in another 6 months. So I do have one final question to ask you before we do get to the end of today's podcast. And that question is a question that I ask all of the guests. It's a 2-pronged question as well. So the question is: space, money, time, and legality are no issue. Prong 1: which non-reptile species would you like to keep? And prong 2: what reptile species would you like to keep?
I don't really have one outside of reptiles.
Okay.
I think I refer to it as my bucket list
Yeah.
animal that I'll probably never get to work with because of legality, because I work in conservation and I cannot put myself through knowing everything I know now. I couldn't. But it would probably be smog or it'd probably be the sun gazer. I really like armadillo lizards. Like the Cordylis Warreni
Yeah.
depressus, like I love them, or Warreni rather.
Yeah.
I really like them, but yeah, you don't see them in the United States, and if you do, they shouldn't be here.
I've got a friend in the UK that's got a pair of armadillo lizards, and I can tell you now, he doesn't see them. Like, I know shouldn't see them in the US, but he has them in a room and you don't see them. So,
Yeah,
but they are very, very cool lizards.
yeah, I really like them. A friend of mine imported some Ouroboros cataphractus, and I might be boarding them for a little while for them till they figure out their living situation.
Wow, that's exciting for you. It doesn't sound great on their
I'd love
part,
the
but
opportunity to work with them.
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
just as long as they don't sell them, yeah, like they can stay here as long as they need to. Just don't sell them.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Right, it is time to wrap up. So, finally, where can people find you if they want to know more?
So you can definitely find me on Instagram under Perfect Hue LLC. I'm happy to have any conversation related to any reptiles, especially Abronia. I'd love to help however I can. If there's something I didn't cover, people have more questions or want to know why, I can try and dig up questions or answers for them.
Yeah.
And
And if there was a
that's
burning question
probably
that
the
I didn't
easiest place to find me.
That's fine. I have put the link to your Instagram account in the show notes below as well. So if there was a question that you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask today, pop over and send Savannah a DM. I'm sure she'll be able to give you a hand. Savannah, it's been lovely to have you on. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I feel like I am a little bit more educated on Abronia than I was an hour and 10 minutes ago. So thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye. Don't go anywhere from the green room. We'll have a little catch up just after the episode. All right. But thank you very much for coming on. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I did.
Perfect. Thank you. Right, folks, there we have it. Hopefully you have enjoyed this episode and I haven't stumbled across my words too much that you've turned off early. If you have, you're not listening to me now. Like I said at the beginning of the show, there is a Patreon link in the show notes below. Go and check that out if you want to. Also, go and follow at where.species on Instagram, because on the 17th of Feb, I am dropping the coolest t-shirts and content creator merch and actually, that's it. Just really cool t-shirts and hoodies and content creator merch. 17th of Feb. It's only going to be available for 2 weeks, and then pre-orders close, and you can't get it again for a while. So if you want it, set a note in your calendars. Go onto Instagram. There's a little thing you can set a reminder there. But yeah, if you want to know more, drop me a DM. But until next time, I have been Ben McIntyre. This has been a ReptiChat podcast. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.